In short, it was blatant fascism meets the Jerry Springer show. CNN's own media reporter, Oliver Darcy, wrote this. It's hard to see how America was served by the spectacle of lies that aired on CNN, adding that the network and its new CEO, Chris Licht, are facing a fury of internal and external criticism. Licht reportedly justified the debacle on the CNN morning editorial call this morning by saying Trump made a lot of news, as if Donald Trump actually gives a crap about that. As the Washington Post's Philip Bump writes, his desired outcome is to attack and undermine the entire system, because by breaking it down, he gains more power. He used CNN on Wednesday the way he used the Republican Party in 2016, as a source of power he could disrupt and repurpose. And my friend and colleague Mehdi Hasan points out, the whole event was designed to fail. Sorry, bud. As predicted, this was a clear win for Trump. He felt no pressure and conceded nothing. He was welcomed onto CNN to address an audience of non-Republicans watching at home and an audience of loyal Republicans sitting in that hall in New Hampshire. Win-win. Joining me now is Mehdi Hasan, host of The Mehdi Hasan Show, and Michael Steele, former RNC chair, MSNBC political analyst, and host of the Michael Steele podcast. Thank you both for being here. And you had the disadvantage, Mehdi, of not being here with us. So I am going to start with you. This is what you wrote about this town hall. CNN, with this ridiculous town hall format and an audience seemingly recruited from the Mar-a-Lago parking lot, put its own anchor in a position to fail. The only way Collins really could have even semi-succeeded would have been if she had ignored the audience and the format entirely and instead tried to pin Trump down on each and every one of his false and offensive statements. But I want to put to you, Mehdi, that her first question was as follows. Polls show that you're dominating the Republican race right now, but you're also under active federal investigation for trying to overturn the 2020 election results. Your first term ended in a deadly riot at the Capitol, and you still have not publicly acknowledged the 2020 election results. Why should Americans put you back in the White House? That, to me, sounds like a question that was designed to fail. Your thoughts on all of this?
Yeah, Joy, just listening to you speak there and introduce it all, you set it up so well. It's so depressing. I was one of those people who went into last night thinking this is going to be bad, but it was worse than even I thought. I thought CNN would have some kind of plan for the night. You and I, Joy, we work in cable news, we work in television. If we had an interview like that, we would sit with our team, we'd say, OK, I'm going to do this. They'll do that. What if this happens? What if this happens? Have we got a plan for... There was nothing. I mean, people are saying today, Caitlin Collins, poor Caitlin Collins, she tried her best. And with the greatest respect to Caitlin Collins, I'm a great admirer of Caitlin Collins' interviews previously. She did very well when she was in the White House briefing room, holding Trump to account. She did a very good interview recently with Rick Scott. But last night, it just wasn't good enough. If you're going up with Trump at 8 o'clock, primetime television, is the biggest interview of your life. Where was the prep? Why go in, as you say, with that question? Why were you not prepared for his lies? We knew what Trump would do. This is not 2016. We haven't gone back in time in a time machine. There's no excuse for not knowing that Trump's going to steamroll you, that Trump's going to verbally abuse you. When he said you're a nasty person, it was almost like, tick. I was waiting for that. There was no way he was going to go through the night without insulting her. There was no way he wasn't going to mock E. Jean Carroll. There was no way he wasn't going to say rigged election again and again. At one point, she says to him, it wasn't a rigged election. You can't keep saying that all night long. Yes, he can.
Yeah, he can.
And he did. He can. And CNN helped him. And you had no plan for it. So, I have a chapter, as you know, Joy, in my book about gish galloping. I wrote a book on this. And I said, Donald Trump is the master of the gish gallop. He will steamroll you. He will hit you with a blizzard of lies. And you know what you can't do? You can't do a live TV format with Donald Trump. And you certainly can't do it in front of an audience of his superfans. That way is madness. It is setting up Caitlin Collins to fail.
Well, and by the way, asking an open question to Donald Trump. You and I have talked about this. I literally did text Mehdi last night. Tell me the name of that thing again, the Gish Gallop, because I was like, what's the name of that thing? Because I was going nuts. I mean, the reality is asking him an open question is inviting him to Gish Gallop by saying,
and not having follow-ups, Joy.
Exactly.
Not having follow-ups. When he says the Democrats are executing babies, you don't move on to the next topic. You stay and you follow up on that. When he says, I didn't say I'd terminate the Constitution, and we all know he did, it's written down, you stay there. You don't move on.
You don't, and look, I think that this was as revelatory, Michael, about the Republican base as it was about Donald Trump and CNN. Because a few things to me became clear last night. Number one, CNN wants desperately to be the new home for Republican viewers.
Yes.
They want to be the new Fox. They want to move to the right.
That's part of Licht's agenda.
Clearly. Sure. And I'll be honest, Chris Licht used to work here. He used to be EP of Morning Joe for a while. He used to work at CNN. CBS, I'm sorry. But it's clear that what he's doing over there and under John Malone, who's the big investor, and the people above him, it's clear that the goal is to make it a friendly place for MAGA. That's very clear. The other thing that's clear is that they allowed that audience to be filled with Trump fans. To Mehdi's point, these weren't undecided New Hampshire voters. Trump's leading by 20 points in New Hampshire.
Right.
They decided to put his fans in the audience so that they could be a cheering section. It was like Jerry Springer vibes. And the third thing I will say to you before I let you talk, and I'm sorry, I'm just going on because I'm in my feelings.
You're good.
Is that if that's the base, if that's the arithmetic median of a Republican, God help your party, because they were hooting and hollering. They were vicious. They were cruel. They were unpleasant. Why would anybody want to join a party like that?
So there's a lot there to unpack.
Unpack, please.
Mehdi, I may need
Talk
you to come in, brother.
Talk me down.
Bring a little bit extra here. So let's step back a little bit, because everything you said is exactly on point. And I think that the important thing, let's take it as I can remember it, because I'm old now, so this is going to make it a little process. So the first part is what CNN tried to do, and they succeeded at that. They gave us exactly what they wanted to give us. They knew what this formula would result in, and it played. And unfortunately for their host, their anchor, she was the hapless victim placed in front of that crowd and in front of Trump for those moments in which the culmination was, you're just a lousy person. You're just a nasty person, right?
And let's remember, she comes from the Daily Caller.
She comes from the Daily Caller,
conservative outlet that Tucker Carlson used to own.
Exactly.
So she's not
a liberal. She was on Fox's air a lot of times, sort of spewing that same pablum.
Yep.
So that part was a check. That audience, to your other point, was the popcorn.
Yeah.
For the MAGA folks sitting at home, seeing CNN portray a MAGA audience in a favorable light, giving them the platform, and there was no counter to that.
Yeah.
And the third piece for me last night was really sort of the final nail in the coffin of the 2024 Republican presidential primary.
For real.
Because I'm sorry, Ron DeSantis, if you're thinking about running for president, and you're on that stage with that man, you ain't ready, baby. I'm sorry. You are not ready for that. And imagine not one, two, but 3 or 4 other people on that stage with Trump. It is like shooting apples in a barrel.
100%.
It's just picking them off one by one.
100%.
And when do they have a chance to retort?
That's right.
And when you come at me, I just do one of these. And let me go over here to Ron.
100%.
Oh, Ron, let me go over here to you, Tim. He takes them all out. And the reality of it is, that last night set that platform up 100%. And put it into motion.
100%. And the thing is, Mehdi, that we talk a lot. You and I talk a lot about, Michael, you and I talk a lot about this, of how we avert the rise of fascism and the sort of forward march of it in this country on the Republican side. What CNN did last night, and even their internal meeting, showed that the journalists over there ain't happy. Yeah. And we all know folks over there and have talked to them. They are unhappy because they understand what they undermined there. Not only the great brand of CNN as a journalistic outfit, and obviously the brand of Caitlin Collins, who was set up to fail, but the idea that CNN is now a partner of Donald Trump in advancing his campaign. What Republican is going to feel confident standing up to him after that? Ron DeSantis is not even close to ready to deal with that. Not even close. He has no personality. He couldn't even stand up to Charlie Crist when he gave him a hard time. This is it.
Stand up to Mickey Mouse.
Or Mickey Mouse.
I completely agree with Michael about what a Republican debate might look like. If Trump even bothers to take part in one, he will wipe the floor with them. But let me just say this about the people who are angry about last night are people like you and I who care about the future of democracy and about journalism and are embarrassed by what we saw. But Ron DeSantis should be mad about last night too, because Donald Trump did seal the deal. He didn't break sweat. There was no moment last night, Joy, where Donald Trump looked even 1% uncomfortable. You and I watched Jonathan Swan's Axios interview for HBO in 2020. The only interview which has really held Trump's feet to the fire. Why? Because Jonathan came prepared, because Jonathan took the right tone, because Jonathan went deep. You could see Trump was panicking that night. There was no panic yesterday. And I just want to return to what you said about the crowd. It's so important what you said about the crowd, because Chris Licht apparently said on the morning call that, look, we have to do this. We had to have them in the crowd because large swaths of people believe what they believe. So We know that large swaths of people believe in misogyny and racism. We know that large swaths of Americans believe in QAnon. Are we going to have a QAnon town hall on CNN? We know that large swaths of America don't believe in climate change. Are we going to have a climate change denial town hall on CNN? Where do we draw the line here? And as for the people themselves, it was disgusting. And I will remind you of this, why Donald Trump is so unique. There are other awful Republican presidents. They have cut taxes on the rich. They have gutted health care. They have deregulated. They have done horrible things at home and abroad. But things that other presidents could come afterwards and maybe try and undo, ameliorate. What Trump has done will be with us for decades.
That's right.
He has allowed some of the worst people in America to come out from under rocks. He has legitimized a corrosive behavior. He has destroyed our public square. And he's allowed these people to say, yeah, we're going to laugh and cheer at racism, at saying people in Chinatown don't speak English, as Trump said last night. We're going to laugh and cheer at a woman who was sexually abused. That kind of stuff, that's worse than any political or legislative change. That kind of stuff's going to be with us for decades.
Absolutely.
Because
he turned CNN into Twitter.